Hello and welcome to Hashtag General. I'm Logan Sidley, and joining me, as always, is my other host, Chris Takamura. How are you doing, Chris?
Not bad.
Not
Pretty
bad,
pretty slow couple weeks, but some
right?
stuff happened.
Like some stuff happened. The text message last night between you and me was me go. I literally was like, I sat on the list for a couple hours because I didn't believe that this was everything for the show note, and then I couldn't think of anything more to include with the show note. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be a Like, I wouldn't bet money that you and I are going to keep this, like, under an hour because it's you and me. We could go on forever, but, yeah, should be a relatively light load for us. But what have you been up to? Like,
Nothing really. I mean, it's been pretty relaxing, I want to say, for the last couple of weeks. I got my iPad, so that's a cool.
yeah, I know
That's
you
a
got your.
fun fact.
How is that treating you?
Not bad. It's been something where I haven't like fully integrated into the workflow yet. And again, it's been a slow couple weeks, so it's not like I have a lot of opportunities to like work into the workflow. Um,
Yeah.
but overall, I think there is, I think there's a lot of opportunity for it, and I've like explored a little bit, and
Yeah,
wow,
because,
it's super useful.
yeah, it is. iPads are fantastic. Like, they are. I think for some people, they can be their primary device. Like, I don't think you or I are ever going to be in that situation, but even then, I find it so incredibly useful that
Right.
it fits in a place that a laptop could fill, but it does so many other things that the laptop doesn't do as well that I like having it in conjunction with a desktop.
Right.
Um,
It's a good sidekick.
yeah,
Um,
and with the
so
right
yeah,
tools, it can be a really powerful one, but did you try out? Because I know I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but I know we talked about it at least I think after the show. Did you try out Ferrite yet?
yeah, I edited my podcast on it from the Monday I got it. It was like one of the first things I did. Um, Super useful, loved it. It was just a little. I just had to figure out a better workflow of like. It's just like a little out of the way because I didn't originally record it on the iPad, and
Right.
so like getting it on there and then like editing it over and then exporting it and then putting it back on my computer to like make the full video, like all that kind of stuff was like, oh, this is super cool. But I'm not entirely sure what like I'm not entirely sure if this makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of me trying to figure it out. But you know,
No, that's the one thing I'd say is my same thing when I've been playing around with Ferrite. It's been trying to figure out the best workflow for it because the biggest problem iPads have, especially in podcasting, is there's no good recording method for podcasting with an iPad because typically the editor is will often be like right now we're recording both myself and Chris on our end, and usually that's what happens in a podcast. So an iPad, there's really no tool that lets you do that as separate channels,
yeah,
and so it just means like it's not really feasible. But Ferrite is like a tool that can use like a split audio track and do all sorts of fun things. It's just that the iPad isn't the best method for source of the audio. You're going to have to source it from somewhere else, which
right.
might be the thing that makes or breaks it in terms of it being usable. But yeah, no, Ferrite's a fantastic app that I think speaks to the potential capabilities of an iPad if, in the right hands.
Right.
But
What have
yeah,
you been up to?
well, just work's been actually busy. Super Bowl is always kind of because I do a lot of work in
Right.
advertising adjacent stuff that Super Bowl week is always pretty heavy, though this year it wasn't the Super Bowl spots. It was just January was so chaotic in terms of the political landscape that a bunch of news that was going to go out in January didn't go out until February, which meant that I basically was putting out January and February things in the space of 2 weeks, and it was just kind of it was a lot. I
I
mean,
bet.
so there would be just days where it was just like, well, I sent out a bunch of press releases. Now I need to find to see about the press releases from yesterday. It just was like this constant cycle of putting out more than I could really keep up with in like my 9 to 5. That's I
Right.
guess the other thing is it's not that I couldn't keep up with it, is so much as I have bosses who are like, you could shut off your computer at 5, and I'd be like, hey, this thing hasn't been done yet, but it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
James, you look like you're trying to find something. Buzzing, it's the hard drive needs to be shut off.
Do the podcast. You can't like stand up or do anything without you going like.
Well, no, it's I also here's the other fun bit. I didn't take the ADHD meds yet, so I'm just easily sidetracked. That was the empty bottle.
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Oh man, this is top content, right?
It really is.
So, actually, James, when you go to leave for your thing, I would not actually be opposed to the actual pill bottle being dropped off. Is it in the kitchen? Well, son of a.
It's with the spices.
Why would medication be with the spices? I actually want to know the rationale for this.
Because that's where you put the.
Okay.
The podcast.
All right. So medication aside, yeah, no, there was that. I've been like rewatching some stuff.
I
Trying
got back into ER, which is a weird thing to bring up, but
Oh God, that's like we're talking like 1990s, or we're like George Clooney pre-fame.
yeah, I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the show. So ER was actually part of the reason why I wanted to be a doctor.
I can
I
believe that.
I because obviously my parents were super into ER because that was the hot show of the early '90s, and so uh, I just grew up watching ER every week with them. That was just something that I did as a kid. So I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the show. It was just something that was like always on. Uh, and so yeah, I know ER pretty well as a series. Like I've watched it a couple of times, like all the way through as an adult, and I still love it. And but anyway, uh, I was scrolling on Reddit, and someone brought up that uh, I forget how I went down this rabbit hole, but someone brought up that ER was a better show than, or sorry, Grey's Anatomy was a better show than ER. And I was like, no,
Oh,
that's total. I was like, that's very wrong. And then
those
so
are also two very shows with two very different like
Styles,
ideology. I'd say like yeah, style
yeah,
and what they wanted to do with the show compared to
100%. They're very
yeah.
different. Not all medical dramas are created equal. Uh, and so yeah, we someone said that, and I was like, no. And then I had a very visceral reaction to that. I was like, this is very wrong. And then I was like, well, where is ER now? Like, where could you watch ER now? Like, maybe they're just ill-informed. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's on Hulu? What? I have a Hulu subscription. And then so I was like, cool, let me watch ER. And I went to watch back a couple of my favorite episodes. And I watched a bunch of my favorite episodes. I watched the last season again because I love that last season. And then it just went down the rabbit hole of like, I'm just gonna watch ER. And so I started it back over, and I started watching ER again.
No, that's a that's a good rabbit hole to fall down with shows like that. I've never actually fully watched like a season of ER. I know I've seen episodes of ER, like probably when it was still originally on air. And yeah, like clearly a very like it is an I would say like a big part of it is on like the medical aspect of the drama, which I feel like Grey's Anatomy is on the drama aspect of it.
Well, I think
Right?
that well, I think it's a little different. I think there is a thing where I think House is more a better foil to ER uh than Grey's Anatomy in the sense that like I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. That House focuses on the patients and the cases that come in, right? Like
Yeah,
if you watch an episode of House, it's like about the patient and it's like, cool, how do these characters solve this one case about the patient today? And of
yeah, it's
course
all
it
about
like
that case. Yeah,
right, and it of course yes, the B story is usually, hey, this is what's going on uh with the cast and the crew. But no, but you know, it is all about the patient and the case usually, and it's everything around that, right? Where ER is mainly about these people and about their lives, and like the ER is the backdrop to that. So it is a workplace drama, really, when you think about it. And Grey's Anatomy is very much the same. I think the difference between them is where ER didn't dumb down or like try to make the medical stuff easy to follow, if that makes sense. It very much took the medical stuff seriously and like it didn't it didn't try to like dumb down the medical jargon
yeah,
in the same way that like Scrubs did too. Scrubs was very realistic in terms of like how it is working in the hospital. Uh and so yeah, for Scrubs and ER, like the medical jargon is like it totally over 99% of the people's heads, but it's
it doesn't
realistic and
matter.
it doesn't matter
Um,
because you can still follow.
yeah, because I remember my mom was maybe even is I don't know a huge Grey's fan, and I remember watching it a couple times with her. Like I think it was like what like I was sick or something, and so she had it playing, and I was just like too tired to care. That it was not something I wanted to pick. Um, and it always felt like watching Grey's, it didn't need to take place in a hospital. Like you could take like
Right.
the drama of it was not dependent on any medical aspect. And you can almost I'm sure you could make that same argument with something like Scrubs or ER and be like, oh, you could just take those characters out, but it doesn't. I don't think that
I think it's a very
in
different show
yeah, it'd be a
if that
very different
happens.
show. Whereas Grey's Anatomy could be the exact same show in just a different setting.
Right.
Um,
And again, I don't want to take this as we're shitting on Grays, but they're just very different shows.
yeah, because I never found Grey's Anatomy bad so much as it was just not my thing.
Right. Whereas for me, I love House, I love Scrubs, I love ER. I do not love Grays.
Yeah, I just remember watching it and being like, okay, I see why a lot of people like this because of like the more interpersonal drama aspect of Grey's Anatomy, but I also was just like, so like this
Yeah,
is
whatever.
like I always find when I watch something, I always do enjoy like the interpersonal dynamics within a show, but that can't be really the only reason I watch the show.
Right.
If that's the only reason I watch the show, it's just like, is there actually like a story being told that isn't? Because I guess that's the other thing too is given like my penchant for like science fiction and fantasy and all that stuff. There's usually always like an overarching story that's being told with where that interpersonal drama is taking place in a bigger story, to where something like Grey's Anatomy where there isn't really where it's all interpersonal drama. There's not much more beyond that. It just kind of is like I don't really care enough
Right.
to keep watching, which might also be one of the reasons why like I remember The Office, I kind of stopped caring the moment Jim and Pam got together. I just like didn't care anymore. It
Oh,
was
really? I thought that added
yeah.
so much to the show
Oh,
in
I'm
terms
sure
of
it did, but it was just like I didn't like I enjoyed The Office, but I didn't like the workplace drama aspect of it enough to where the moment this other side story kind of reached a conclusion, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I actually I want to dive in. Then again, I'm also really weird with comedy shows. Like, I love Scrubs, but man, like, only watched 3 seasons of The Office. Yeah, I'm probably not the typical comedy person.
Right. Like, do you like Community?
Oh, I loved Community, but I also
Okay.
like phased out at season 4. Like, I haven't even seen season 5 or 6.
Oh man, it gets so good. Like they
I
brought
just
it
didn't want
back.
to pay Yahoo when they were trying the
Well,
thing.
remember Yahoo did it. It wasn't they in charge. Yahoo didn't charge. It was all free.
But it's still like it was like one of those things where it's just like whenever a net subscription service only has really one program that interests you, it's like the CBS All aspect access problem with Star Trek.
Yeah.
If Star
Yahoo
Trek is my
Screen.
yeah, if it's still there, I might just have to actually finish so I can get my 6 seasons, even though we're
It's on
probably never gonna
somewhere.
get. Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
all on
sure.
Netflix. I think
I'm
it's
sure
all on
it's
Netflix.
probably all on Netflix. It might even be on Hulu at this point.
No, it's Netflix because
Is it?
Netflix. The Community had a big boom during quarantine, and it was because it came to Netflix all 6 seasons.
Oh, okay. I might actually have to go through and finish because I love shows like Community. Like that's like my comedy, like perfect, like right
Yeah,
where I wanted, like where I like my comedy, where it is very absurd. Uh,
Dan Harmon, man.
yeah, like I'm all for the absurdity in comedy. It's I think also one of the things I like about Scrubs is it has a very it takes itself seriously but isn't afraid to make fun of itself.
Yes.
Like you don't do some of like the stylistic choices they made in Scrubs isn't something you do if you want your series to be taken seriously 100% of the time. But the
Right.
content that they are discussing is serious, and so it's just yeah. But I should think about going back and watching something like ER. I've been actually wanting to do a rewatch of Galactica
Ooh.
because it's been a while since I watched Battlestar Galactica. My biggest my biggest problem is it seems like that's one of those shows that jumps from streaming service to streaming service, and it's
It's hard
never
to follow, yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of hard to follow. So I'm very hesitant to start it up again unless I was to because I have the entire series on Blu-ray. So it isn't like I can't just watch it, but man, this sometime I think we should have like a discussion, and maybe even now because the shortness of our list, the how Blu-ray is still so amazing, but because of the convenience of streaming, it's almost like ugh, like when it's a TV show, having to sit there and not just have the next episode play right away, but you have to like get up and go grab and change the disc. It's so first world problems.
It really is.
But it's also like I find that actually often is like enough to make me go, I'm not gonna watch it today.
Mm. Yeah, I feel you. I think that I completely agree with that as being a first world problem.
Daddy,
Yes, honey.
I had a video dream.
Hmm.
I dreamed of Popo and her and Popo and Dong and you and me were there and it was snowing.
Hmm. Yeah, Samantha had a dream.
Dream was it snowing? Did I hear that right?
Hello. That was
No, it was snowing.
Ah, has she ever actually seen snow?
No. Which makes this conversation very odd.
there was snowing in my dream.
Hmm.
Daddy, can I leave you? It was snowing in my dream.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Ah,
Yeah, so she's amazed that it was snowing in her dream.
God, we gotta show this girl some snow.
No, okay, so how do you Have you kept up on this Texas all the Texas stuff by the way?
I've
Insane.
followed it, but not really closely. Like I know what's going on, but I haven't been like doing a deep dive into it. But yeah,
It's a
it's not
it's
good.
pretty insane. Can you turn it down? Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty crazy to kind of see what happened. And I thought about it too.
because I've
Hmm.
been in the situation where you're without power in
Hmm.
uh below freezing temperatures. It's never fun.
Yeah, I think the
Haven't been
crazy
in that
part to
situation
me,
for like days, and then the other thing is when I have been in that situation, like the natural gas was still working, and that's like the problem they're having in Texas is it's so cold that the natural gas isn't working. So
yeah,
if you have gas heating, you're kind of you got nothing.
well, yeah, and then plus the stuff to me is that's insane is like all the pipe bursting.
Mm-hmm.
Because now from 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 my friends in Texas and family in Texas, it's it's the kind of thing where they have power now, but they most of them don't have or running water
Oh man.
because of the pipes, and they can't obviously get that until the pipes are fixed, right? So that's a concern.
Yeah. Eventually, you're gonna have a bunch of people without drinking water, and that's never any good. I do know that FEMA was authorized for emergency assistance, so hopefully, supplies will make it their way down there. But when you have infrastructure break like that, it isn't going to be a 5 minute fix.
No, absolutely not.
Like,
And I was thinking about it where, like, yeah, the the crazy part is like, yeah, LA isn't necessarily like if it's not gonna happen, but if LA had a freak like storm, like a snowstorm, we would be screwed too because LA is not infrastructured for snowstorm.
no, no, my it gets into the 40s at night, and my
Yeah,
apartment gets freezing. Like, if it dropped below freezing and never went above it, like I would not be able to actually I James and I would either have to have the heat on full time and like abandon our bedrooms just so we could be in the living room where the heater is.
and snuggle.
Might get to that point because got like this apartment just doesn't keep heat because California doesn't need insulation apparently.
Nonsense.
It's I am colder in my apartment in Los Angeles than I ever was in my home growing up in Idaho, where we got, snow and freezing temperatures on a regular basis. It's just like, I like, and you would think it'd be the other way around, but no, like in Idaho, they were just like, oh yeah, you need insulation to keep the heat in and like the hot air out in summer. Just like, like, yeah, I don't know if that was just like a phase that California eventually got out, but it seems like everyone I know who has an apartment or a house from like the 50s is in that same situation where there just isn't insulation. But you're right. If a freak winter storm hit LA, I would not want to be in LA. Not necessarily because I like, I think I still have some of my winter gear that I just never got rid of, but I don't imagine that other people around me would handle it very well.
Yeah, no.
Like my winter storm story involves more than 6 feet of snow in under 24 hours. Like so I've been there, done that in some ways, but not in a situation like LA where no one would be used to it. Like I'd be worried about just getting out of town even because people here can barely drive in the rain.
Yeah,
But it yeah, it would definitely be it would not be a fun situation. So, and I imagine it's the same in Texas where they're in a part of the country where even if like snow would happen, it wouldn't be this cold.
yeah,
And having been in winters where like we were in the single or teens for like, I want to say it was like a couple months. Like we had like a really major cold snap. Like you, even if you have adequate heating, quote, adequate heating, it's cold still. Like you are
Yeah.
basically getting to, I'm not freezing and can kind of tolerate it. Like you're still wearing multiple layers and probably carrying around like a blanket with you. Cold. And they don't have heating now. And I had heating then, and it still was hard to keep it warm at times. So, yeah, I don't like, it's got to be bad. Like, it's not going to be a fun time for them.
No, absolutely not. I feel bad for anyone that has to deal with it, but
Yeah. No, winter storms are always, I feel, worse in the sense that it's harder to get anywhere. It's almost like even just even being inside, you can get sick because again, you're like trying to keep warm when there is no heat.
right.
It eventually it wears you down. It wears you down emotionally, it wears you down physically, and you get sick. So you're gonna have a bunch of people in this situation where it's like a cold is now gonna be very, very concerning because there is no like the best remedies for that, like stay warm, rest, more hot liquids, that type of thing is just not an option for a lot of people. So
Yeah,
fingers crossed for Texas.
absolutely.
But shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, so we have one very quick topic on games, and then another topic that's not actually on the lower thirds for games. So real quick, BlizzCon. I guess my interest in anything they announced is the fact that I'm always interested in like games that I might be able to like play with my friends, and so like a Diablo 2 remaster is like, I wonder if that's something we could play. But I didn't feel like BlizzCon or like the stuff they announced was like earth shaking. It was kind of like, oh hey, Diablo 2 is getting remastered. That's really cool. Oh, they showed off
That was
some
pretty
stuff
much
from
that was the
Double
only
Yellow.
pretty much.
Yeah, it was like they showed off a thing from Diablo 4 and Diablo 2 is being remastered, and it's like, cool.
Yeah, I mean the thing is the Diablo. We knew Diablo 4 wasn't going to be wasn't coming out this year. That was on the investor call, and then we knew that, or we saw that Diablo 2 remaster is kind of like the worst kept secret ever. Like everyone knew that was coming.
Man, there's
yeah,
so many
there's-
really bad secrets in gaming that we can like just off the top of my head. You have listed I think 3 things in the past 6 months as the worst kept secret in gaming. That is the Fable,
yeah,
Mass Effect,
yeah.
Legendary Edition, and now Diablo 2. Like apparently gaming can't keep secrets.
No,
It's
not
like
at all.
Hollywood. Everyone knows everything.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I remember seeing that news and I was like, oh, it's BlizzCon. I remember seeing like the news. I'm like, oh, I wonder what else is gonna come out. And then there's like nothing the next day, and I was like, oh, it's like, oh, I guess,
Yeah, we just knew it was kind of gonna be like a dead year
yeah,
for BlizzCon. Yeah, there's just not much going on with them as a company, and it is kind of sad to see because it's something that
yeah. It's
never
almost
used to be the case before.
it's. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you definitely have a better sense of this than I do, because I'm also not as into the like Blizzard space as you are and some of our friends. But is it just like in the past 5 years that Blizzard has kind of just started to like fizzle out?
Well, that's been the case for about a little more than 5 years now. I think the issue that you're having with a company like Blizzard now is they built a lot of time uh, on nostalgia. They built a lot of their stuff on nostalgia.
Oh, look at WoW Classic almost is like an
Right.
example of that.
WoW Classic, Diablo 2 Remaster, like all of this stuff is built really pretty much on nostalgia. And so when you have something like that, the issue that you're going to run into is like, what's next and what's the new thing? And they can't find the new thing.
Well, you could
Uh,
like Overwatch was supposed to be the new thing.
I mean, but even then, Overwatch doesn't function really as the new thing.
Yeah, it was like the other thing,
Right.
but
Uh,
never the new thing.
yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm Warcraft. Here's my kid brother, Overwatch.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the issue that you're running into with them. And so, yeah, I think the problem that you're seeing now with Blizzard is like, okay, Overwatch is cool. It lost a lot of steam. I don't know if the fan base can survive another year with no content because they announced that no new content's coming to base Overwatch until Overwatch 2 launches. Like, obviously there is the stuff where like yeah, heroes and maps are going to stay consistent. So Overwatch 1 is going to get updated when Overwatch 2 gets drops, but there's not going to be anything standalone for Overwatch only until Overwatch 2 drops. So any new content will be Overwatch 2 only. Or yeah, it's gonna wait for Overwatch 2. So, that's kind of the tricky thing.
Yeah, and the people I would have played Overwatch with, I'm playing Fortnite with. It's just
Right,
like everyone kind of moved on, and the game was just sitting there.
right,
Like, if you were to give me an option to be like, hey, do you want to play Fortnite or Overwatch? I'd probably pick up Fortnite. If I was going to pick up a different game, I'd probably be like, hey, let's all try Valorant. Get that going. Because that game, even though I haven't played it in a while, it's fun to kind of pick up and play. But I think Overwatch, the last few times I had played it, I felt like the community had also become like a little bit more toxic. Don't know if that was just my experience with it or if it's just because it was becoming more and more as it was becoming smaller and smaller, the people playing it were more likely to be familiar with the meta than I ever would have been. So of
right,
course I'm doing stuff that was upsetting people because, I'm just sitting there to play and they're just like, oh, you need to be doing this XYZ. And I'm just like, I don't know or care what you're talking about. And
right.
it just got to the point where I just, meh. But yeah, it's kind of that it just was like I felt like it was a no flash even with BlizzCon, just kind of like, oh, everyone got excited who was like a fan of Diablo, but
I mean, I don't even think Diablo fans are excited, to be completely honest.
yeah,
Yeah, because again, like Diablo 2 is exciting, but we knew that was coming. Diablo 4 is going to be absolutely awesome, but we just don't know. Like, there's no news for that game. Um, so we're just kind of sitting in a holding pattern.
yeah. I mean, a lot of things are sitting in a holding pattern right now, but this doesn't feel like a pandemic holding pattern. This feels like Blizzard put themselves into a holding pattern and
Yeah,
just can't get out of it.
pretty
Um,
much, pretty much the case that I'm seeing too. So
all right, let's move on to the next topic. Pretend that their transition happened on the lower third. The CD Project Red hack, which this was probably the one thing I should have included and didn't think to include that I couldn't think of for 4 hours. Why don't you take the lead on this one because you are definitely more familiar with this than I am. I just really my brief assessment of my knowledge of this is I know that something was hacked.
yeah, essentially, CJ Project Red got hacked. And so we didn't know what happened until they put out a statement on their Twitter. They basically said, "Hey, there's this hack that happened. We're not going to be negotiating or like doing anything with this. So, stuff might come out, and that's okay with us. That we're fully aware of our situation, and basically all that kind of stuff. Uh, and so, yeah, they made a statement, and uh, so what was stolen was a bunch of HR information and employee files, which is a big deal. But also, there's a lot of data, well, source code in particular for um, a source code for uh, Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk, which I don't think most people understand what source code is and like how important source code is. Um, Basically, source code. Obviously, when you buy the game, you get the executable exe file, right? And then you get the game and stuff like that. And of course, you can break out that source code file, right, into other stuff. The issue that you run into is like source code is basically how the sauce is made, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
There
no,
is
like
a
because I'm gonna immediately translate this into something I'm familiar with like video editing. Uh, you would like watch the final video of something, whereas the source code of the video is going to be whatever my project is in the timeline. That could be
right,
multiple different clips from different sources. That's going to be the titles. That's going to be all the sound sources. You get it in a nice like mixed bow, or like tied nice and neat. But I would have made all of the raw everything that went into that final product.
right. So it's a big deal that that leaked out because that's sort of I don't want to say bread and butter, but it's the secret sauce, so to speak, of the games industry of like, yeah, everyone works with the same assets, the same graphics, the same video elements, stuff like that. Really important stuff. But the difference is how that's all put together usually.
And now
Um,
people can see all of those details. Anything that may
right,
have been hidden, but might have added like that extra layer of satisfaction is
correct,
exposed.
correct.
Yeah, because I know a lot of games I play, like especially like the strategy based, like Civilization or like Stellaris or anything like that, have a heavy modding component to where I feel like more of not maybe not the source code, but more of like the raw, this is how the game performs, is made available just so modders have easy access to it. But I feel like that's the exception rather than the rule.
The rule, right,
Yeah. Like it makes sense that for games like that, where modding has been in some cases helps extend the life of some of these games, where you might expose some more details so that way a modder might actually have a better idea how their work can just fit in nice and neat with the work of the developer. But something like Witcher, I don't think it falls into that category where you would, sure, you can mod it, but why would they make it easy for you to see all the nuts and bolts?
right.
But yeah, no, that's not a fun position to be in. I do know it sold.
Yeah, so it went on the dark web, obviously, and sold. It was on bid at first, and then it moved into uh, a different, or someone bought it outright. I think $7 million was the
God.
price from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm wondering who. Like, I that's what I want to know. Was this like a white hat entity? Even though as you pointed out when you and I were first talking about this before we started rolling, CDPR has already said that they did not buy it.
Right. They said they weren't negotiating or dealing with them at all. So who knows?
Yeah. What do you think the big outcome of this, like worst case outcome for this?
Uh, I don't think there's a worst case outcome. Like I don't think anything major comes out of this. Uh, I think it's just a sort of mm, actually I'm not 100% sure to be completely honest. Like it's so weird to think like that it's so weird to think that like their secrets are out there, but like we're never gonna know that their
Right.
secrets are out there.
Yeah. It
Because
really
because
because the person
whoever
could have bought it and then do nothing with it.
yeah, I mean it could just be a rival company, right? Like you never know.
Um. Yeah, that was because my thought. Even though CDPR said, "Oh, we didn't buy it," I wonder if there was like a gaming organization, like one of the public, because a lot of these publishers, like they're of course groups and entities that they team up on types of things, like with lobbying and all that type of stuff. And wouldn't shock me at all if like a one of the advocacy groups led by publishers just quietly bought it, even if CD Projekt Red wasn't involved, just so that way it doesn't become out there because they want to protect the industry at large and not just themselves.
Right.
But that's like the white hat scenario, and who knows if it's a white hat scenario? Because because that was my thing too when I was thinking about like what is the worst case is someone just puts a bunch of the source code online and people study it. Like, sure, you could probably like someone could probably put everything up online and then you could download the source code and then compile it and run a pirated version of Witcher 3, but it's just like no one's gonna go through that effort.
Yeah.
Like at that point it's just like just wait for Witcher 3 to go on sale. It goes on sale all the time. It's a good game. You get it for like $20 anymore. Like
Yeah.
don't why bother? So it's just yeah, it's all there's all sorts of questions there, like on what they could do with it. So I guess who knows what happens next.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. So we shall see, and let's move on to probably one of the bigger pieces of news from the past few weeks in the realm of Star Wars. Gina Carano was unceremoniously dropped from all future installments of The Mandalorian and anything Star Wars related. Even Hasbro has apparently dropped her the Cara Dune lineup of
Yeah.
action figures even got dropped. It's just like everyone, her talent agent dropped her, Lucasfilm dropped her,
But hey,
Hasbro
she's
stopped making
she's but hey,
toys.
she's doing a movie with Ben
Ben
Shapiro.
Shapiro, failed Hollywood screenwriter and scum of the earth, Ben Shapiro. It's
Yeah.
like
For me, I could care less because it's a thing of yes, she was saying terrible things. Even if she wasn't saying terrible things, like it's just part of your job to like be professional and like you don't have to like I understand free speech and all that stuff, but like man, need to uh you
think
need
before
to
you
like
speak.
yeah,
Like there are morals clauses in contracts
yeah,
specifically for times like this. So they can all like that's the thing I don't think a lot of people realize is dropping someone like this would typically have like some form of financial negative backlash on like Lucasfilm or I think she was with WME. It may have been UTA. Oh well. Talent agents. Alphabet soup that doesn't matter to you if you're outside of Hollywood. And because of what she had been saying for a few months, they could drop her and just point to the morals clause and be like, nope. Which means that she's gonna get like she has no like financial course of action that she could take against anyone who
Yeah.
dropped her, because
And
they're gonna
again, she's been crying victim the entire time too, which is really off-putting. Um,
yeah, it's the whole thing with the whole censorship thing right now. You're not being censored, you're just an asshole.
yeah,
Like like if you are able to go onto a nationally available, like a certain senator from Missouri, if you write an op-ed piece in a nationally available newspaper, you're not being censored. Censorship is an act of the government against the people, not the act of a private organization against someone. Like, you're not being
yeah,
censored. You are literally nowhere near the definition of censorship. You're just an
yeah.
asshole.
I feel like we have this conversation a lot with people, like, or with
Oh,
the internet in particular, and it's really again, it's really off-putting. But
yeah. It's like she can say all the horrible things she wants. That doesn't mean she's free from consequence.
yeah,
And so I have really no sympathies. You said some horrible things about transgendered individuals, and you decided that being a Republican was like being a Jewish person in the Holocaust. Yeah, no. Just
yeah,
no. But I think what's interesting to me is what I've read in the trades about, like, where some behind the scenes details got leaked, because just like how you have these worst kept secrets in gaming, it's kind of like how Kenobi was the worst kept secret in Hollywood.
yeah,
Um, like, people talk, like the entire establishment of entertainment talks, because more often than not, like, this is something I pointed out to the other day to someone, is the fact that Bob Iger started at ABC and worked his way up through the Disney ranks after ABC got acquired by Disney, like, is rare in entertainment. It is very
right,
rare for someone to only work in one company. Usually you look at the resumes of the C-level executives, they've worked at multiple studios, multiple networks. You move around. You often have like a friendly relationship with someone who works at another network, who might even work in the same realm you do, just because that's just the nature of the business. You are competitors only when you have something up against the other person in the same time slot or the same weekend.
right,
And even then, it's not like a slug 'em, like knockout heavy fight. No one, it just isn't that way. So people talk because they, it's all about narrative. And I'm starting to think that she was going to get shadow dropped, essentially. I have a feeling that Cara Dune, even prior to the official "we're giving her the boot," it sounds like Lucasfilm was going to just not continue on with her.
yeah. It seemed like that they're just kind of waiting or writing on the wall at that point.
Yeah, like this was kind of like, I have a feeling just season 3 of Mandalorian would have rolled around and we wouldn't have had Cara Dune, and they wouldn't have
Right,
mentioned it. Like, she would just exist. Like, I think that was probably the Lucasfilm hope, was that she's saying some horrible things. She keeps just causing problems, but maybe if it just dies down enough, because it sounds like she was irritating people at Lucasfilm for a while about this stuff,
yeah,
to where they were going to drop her because of it. But I don't think they wanted to sit there and just have to say publicly she's gone. I think they wanted it to just kind of quietly go off into the night, because if they don't say anything, then it's just kind of like it falls into the realm of conjecture, and they could just play, oh, blah, 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 blah. Maybe in the future we're still, the plans are always like they can say a bunch of empty words that don't confirm she's coming back, but also
right,
don't deny that she's not coming back. It's like they got put into a situation where they had to say something, and I think this just confirmed what they were going to do and made it more just solid, and it made it an out point for everyone. Like, the more I look at it, the more I think Cara Dune wasn't coming back for season 3 of Mandalorian. It sounds like, as much as everyone was saying, oh, Rangers of the New Republic was going to be about Cara Dune, it may have been at some point, but it sounds like prior to even
they
the
pivoted
announcement of
off.
the show, they had pivoted off her. So they had announced the show where it may have been at one point like her, but by the time it was announced, Lucasfilm had already moved on. So apparently, like, if Lucasfilm was going to announce her involvement in something like that, they were evidently planning to do it at the Disney Investor Day. And
Yeah,
notice how she was never mentioned at Disney Investor Day. Like, so
yeah,
everything we're here, like, everything that's coming from, like, sources at Lucasfilm kind of lines up to that idea that she just was going to be gone.
yeah. This is just like kind of the tipping point.
Yeah, like, it just, we hit the tipping point and they were just like, okay, now we can't be silent anymore, which, by the way, they probably shouldn't have been as silent as long as they were. But,
So I was reading an article from like a post from like a talent person in the industry, like a manager or whatever, and they're saying that use of the word abhorrent, which is the word that Disney used to describe
I,
or
yeah, I
Gina
think I've read
Carano's
this one.
statement.
Yeah,
Yeah, the use of the word abhorrent is like insider lingo, like code word of like she
we're
will
never,
never be touched. Yeah,
yeah, we're
like she
never
will never be
hiring her
hired again.
again. You should never hire her.
Yeah.
She's become toxic. Like, she's become radioactive to where, yeah, she's got this deal with Ben Shapiro. Like, talk about talk about
Step
pinnacle
down.
of excellence. You know, human moron, Ben Shapiro. Like, no one is going to touch her. Like, her best case scenario is 10 years from now, she can kind of pull a Mel Gibson, which again is a question of like, why was Mel Gibson allowed to pull a Mel Gibson? But,
But also Mel Gibson is a good actor.
right. Like, Mel Gibson is a talented actor and a talented director who is just kind of like reprehensible in some of the things he said and believes. Gina Carano is got the reprehensible stuff down, but didn't get the acting stuff along with it.
No.
To where she and Kevin Sorbo can star in the next, like, God's Not Dead 5, the censorship.
The censorship? No.
Like, it's where it's just like absolute hot garbage, horribly shot, horribly acted. The internal logic of the series just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, Hercules and Cara Dune all yakking it up about things, and God's Not Dead 5. Like,
Yeah.
that's her fate. But to move on, to not just continue to talk about the demise of one Gina Carano, I think
Yeah.
some of the ideas that have been floating around the internet on what could happen to replace her, I'm interested in some of these ideas. Have you heard this one, Chris? Iden Versio in Rangers of the New Republic or Mando to fill in the slot that had been Cara Dune.
I like that a lot. I personally was thinking, I was like, they should just sign Ronda Rousey and have her play Dune Cara. Because Ronda Rousey, I personally think Ronda Rousey is a better Gina Carano because she's a better MMA fighter, but also I think she's like really charismatic and like likable, and I think that she is a better actress than Gina Carano. Like I just think she's just better. She's a better Gina Carano than Gina Carano.
That is, I love it. Dune Cara. Oh my god. That's a good one. I like that one. But yeah,
Yeah.
no. Like, I saw Iden Versio running around, being thrown around a lot, and I'm all for that because if you're not familiar with the Battlefront 2 campaign, they had a huge time skip, in that it takes place after Return of the Jedi, but then there is a kind of lead up to, I want to say it's concurrent to, I don't remember if Hosnian Primus happened yet or not, but it's concurrent with Force Awakens, so it leads up to The Last Jedi. There's like a brief campaign, so we've seen Iden Versio from like Return of the Jedi period, and we've seen her in sequel period, but there's still a huge question mark of what happened in between. And she's the type of character who would like fit in perfectly as someone working for the New Republic to try to, help not necessarily bring order to the galaxy, because, she kind of tried that once. It didn't go well. But like to work with the New Republic in the Outer Rim. Like that seems like something she would have been doing. And then maybe we can get Shriv in live action and not get it cock teased to us in one of the tie-in novels to the, Rise of Skywalker, and then he never appears in the movie. I'm apparently slightly hurt about the lack of Shriv in Rise of Skywalker. Did you know that they had him in the tie-in novel, like Return? I forget what it's called, but it was the tie-in novel that they released like a month before Rise of Skywalker, and Shriv is one of the characters that they bring in. And I was like, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get Shriv in the movie, and nope, no Shriv. We need more Shriv in the universe. Give me some of that sarcastic Shriv. Put him and Lando back together.
Lando Calrissian.
But there's talk of her. I saw a few people push to say that they wanted Dr. Aphra to be in it, and I want something with Dr. Aphra. Full stop. I don't want her to just be shoehorned in as like a secondary character in Mando if it doesn't make sense to tie her in. That's just my one caveat there. Right. Aphra is one of the best things to come out of the Marvel Comics run. Like, don't just like, I would almost, if you were told, oh, I can have Aphra and Mandalorian, or maybe in the future we could get an Aphra series, I would say, let's hold off for the Aphra series, because she's just, I can see Aphra headlining her own show.
Right.
But she was also tossed about as a potential like replacement. But and those were the two I noticed the most were them. I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing, especially with like Rangers and the New Republic, if we're going to start seeing more, because we've already had a book character from Aftermath appear in Mandalorian with Cobb Vanth in episode 1 of season 2. I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing some more of the characters from Aftermath maybe tie into Rangers of the New Republic in some way.
We could. I mean, they've kind of opened the door to have anything at this point.
But yeah, it's losing Cara Dune is like the least of my worries. Was she an interesting character? Yes. Was she portrayed the best by the actress they cast to play her? Not really. And I don't think it's a loss to have it be that she's on Navarro or gets stationed elsewhere, because the real truth is I don't want to lose her and then because of that also lose
Grief Karga.
Yeah. Like, there was obviously a theme with her and Grief Karga. Like, they had a rapport going. Like, they were turning Navarro around. And so I don't want him to be, caught in the shrapnel of what went down. But, yeah, Gina's gone.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
I'm like, yeah, like okay.
About time. Um, let us move on, shall we?
Yeah.
Our final topic. Spoilers, everybody. Uh, WandaVision.
WandaVision.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
what
pretty
are your
hype.
thoughts? You're pretty hype.
I'm pretty hype. I mean, I love the Agnes reveal, which we knew. I think everyone knew was coming, right?
Yeah, you knew something
Um,
was going on with Agnes, but I love how they handled that reveal. It was just like, my God, so perfect for the tone of this series.
yeah. Also, there's two Agnes lines that kill me. It's the when she's trying to uh get the kids into her house, and she goes, "I don't bite," and then it does the cutaway to the interview, and she goes, "I actually did bite a kid once." That one, like that one killed me, and then at the end of the song, she goes, "And I killed Sparky too," and she does like the witch cackle, and it killed me. I was laughing so hard. Um,
No, like it was Agnes all along was just like perfect.
yeah, it's really good tonally. I'm curious how they're gonna work her in because Agnes is a very powerful character, and like this show is filled now with powerful characters.
Yeah.
I love the reference to Nexus in the commercial.
Why don't you
Uh,
fill some people in on that? Because I actually had to look into that because I didn't know what that was referencing right away until I read
so
up on it.
yeah, so uh, Nexus beings are a Marvel term. Think of it like Omega level mutants in uh, X-Men comics, where they're just it's a term of power level and a term of like so Nexus beings are beings that can affect and change and kind of shape the multiverse. Because of that, there's only one of them. So like you and I, normal folk, if there is a multiverse, there are versions of me and you running around,
Hmm.
right? Uh, Nexus beings, there's only one of them because they are too powerful for them to be multiple versions of themselves in the multiverse. And then they also have the power to shape and affect like their powers can affect the multiverse. So Scarlet Witch is considered a Nexus being. Vision is considered a Nexus being. I'm pretty sure Agatha is also considered a Nexus being. Um, like Doctor Strange, Dormammu, stuff like that are all Nexus beings. Uh, so yeah, it's an interesting concept, but it's the first time that we've seen it in the MCU. But it's significant because
That it
that
means the multiverse stuff that everyone's been talking about and that's been hinted coming forward is kind of being confirmed. Well, I mean, it's already been
well, we
confirmed,
we already
but
we already knew it was coming, but I mean, it is them setting the groundwork of like, okay,
hmm.
cool. Let's throw this in like let's not hit them over the head with it, but let's put that in this commercial, this fake commercial, and then hopefully people look it up and now can understand sort of what we're saying. And so that's a really clever way of doing it. It's a very trusting thing to your fans to like, yeah, okay, they'll get this. Don't worry about it. We'll put that in there. People look it up. People talk about it. Whatever. So it'll be in there. I love the line at the end of the commercial of the universe doesn't revolve around you, or does it? Was the tagline from the commercial, which is great. Perfect. Um, but yeah, that's what they're referencing there.
Yeah,
But yeah, super cool. I also love how they revealed the Monica Rambeau powers, and very clearly that she knew that she had them because she's not affected at all. She does not. She's not phased at all.
right. She's not confused or upset or bothered. It was
She's
just
just like,
like she
cool.
never engaged them the first time she walked through.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, she has her powers. She obviously knows that she has them, or she knew already that she had them because again, she's not phased at all. Tiana Paris, who's the actress that plays Monica, did tease that she's excited for people to find out who the aerospace engineer is. So again, that's another big tease that
Yeah.
maybe we get at the end of the season. Maybe it's John Krasinski. Who knows? She said that people have been very intuitive and very smart with their guesses. So
Well, seeing as most people have been guessing Reed Richards, it's probably no.
who knows? Who knows? Tiana Paris is a newcomer to the Marvel universe, so to the MCU, so she might not know the art of tact and lying to the community yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
so,
it's me. It's the MCU version of me. I'm the awesome aerospace engineer.
oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm Victor Von Doom, everybody. That would actually be the worst casting choice ever. Can you imagine me as a Marvel villain? I'd be horrible.
You'd be you'd be Butters from South Park. What's Butters' villain?
Oh my
He's a
god.
doctor. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He's Doctor something. I can't remember his name.
And he's just like not really evil.
He just
I'd be
does
one of
like
like I've been rewatching Justice League, and I am not up to this episode yet, but it reminds me of like I'd be one of the Flash's villains who's like, Logan, your meds. Like, come on, man, we've been through this. Oh man. But yeah, no, have you read or seen the Polygon article that came out? I want to say it was Friday about
no.
their argument. The person's argument is that the biggest weakness in WandaVision as a series is just the MCU itself. And their
Okay.
argument is that, and I think it kind of ties into something I've brought up before, where oftentimes I find that as much as I enjoy the Marvel movies, I've even used, and you've disagreed with me, but I've used the term like a meme blockbuster, where it's really fun. You really enjoy it in the moment. You crack jokes that are references to it for like a couple months, and then everyone moves on to the next Marvel meme blockbuster.
Right.
Where it made this argument that the MCU has never actually had to sit down and spend time with a character to where the character moments, this person, and I don't fully agree with them, but I kind of agree with some of their sentiment about like some of the underlying problems. It's that because the MCU never really was dedicated a lot of time beyond like a very quick superficial moment of character, with I would say maybe the exception of Iron Man, that when it is forced to be wholly dependent on the character, like where it's wholly dependent on Wanda's breakdown, it doesn't quite hit because they've never done that before.
Mm, I would disagree with that because I feel like you get that all the time where like the whole arc with Tony where going from Iron Man 3 where he has the kind of PTSD from New York going to Endgame where he has the fight with Cap or even Civil War where they have the fight in the bottom where they have an intense conversation about Tony's parents. Like the line that hits me all the time is
He killed my mom.
no, the line that hits me is when Tony's the suit's down, he's stuck on the floor, and Cap's walking away with Bucky, and he says something like, "The shield doesn't belong to you. It's my father's. It's my father's shield. Whatever he made the
Oh yeah,
shield."
my dad made
And
that.
yeah, and and he drops the shield obviously and leaves it because he realizes that yeah, I don't deserve this shield or let them down, stuff like that, right? Um, and like all like these emotional beats hit right like and I feel like I feel like if someone walks away from any like if you watch the entire series all these movies and you feel like we haven't learned or sat down with these characters, feel like you haven't watched them. I feel like you're focusing on the wrong parts of them. Like the action set pieces are fun, but like these characters are really what makes these movies work, and like the character moments that make these movies work. And so yeah, like the Scarlet Witch thing hits really hard because she has a really kind of tragic arc through this whole universe of she loses her brother when you first meet her. She loses her parent. You met her, she's already kind of damaged from losing her parents. Then she loses her brother. Then she kind of finds a surrogate family that she doesn't really know her place in.
She
Uh,
accidentally kills a bunch of people
she
in
accidentally kills a
Lagos.
bunch of
Yeah.
people. Yeah, she actually kills a bunch of people. The only ones that she really has a relationship with are Vision and Hawkeye, and then uh, I guarantee we'll get some of that in the Hawkeye series. But anyway, the uh, Vision stuff. Vision dies in front of her. She's forced to kill him first. Then uh, she gets to watch as he's brought back to life and then killed again, which is absolutely terrifying. Um, but yeah, it like her arc makes a ton of sense, and to me, it hits just as hard emotionally. I think the issue with WandaVision, that I don't think is an issue, but I think I can see why people think this. A lot of the darkness is uh, under the surface, and a lot of like the grief and the
Yeah.
dark tones of the series are like under the surface, and they're starting to come up more and more and more. But I think like unless you're really paying attention, and unless you're like fully invested and understand, like you don't pick up on it enough. Where again, it's supposed to be subtle, and I think that's the whole point. I don't think they're doing anything wrong there, but I can't see why you could miss that, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things they made a point in the article was this idea that Marvel is so much about the mystery of what's going on in every movie. Like the entire universe is almost in some way like the lead up to Thanos. That a lot of the driving momentum of the MCU is always into trying to figure out what's next. And they countered that with looking at the Mandalorian, where Mandalorian like has a quest, but you were still watching even. I guess the argument they were making is Mandalorian isn't always about the mystery of what's next so much as he's on this quest and he interacts with these multiple different things, but there's only one constant, and that's him and Grogu. And they were arguing that they weren't sure that any Marvel character, and I think they're wrong, I think you've highlighted a few that could do it, would necessarily be able to be pulled out of the movies, and if there wasn't a mystery of what comes next, so what's the underlying theme that's going on, it was Agnes all the time, aspects of Marvel, if that got stripped away and it was just the character having to exist in the universe as themselves, that they weren't sure that they would all be able to stand up on their own 2 feet.
I feel like that's a lot of like I feel like that line of thinking is very short-sighted, and I think it's like something that I feel like it's something that last year we had no MCU,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like coming back to the show, yes, this show is fully based in the mystery and like the what's going on and the what's coming next part of it. Like that's just the nature of how this show is structured, and like that's the main draw of how this show is working. The difference, though, I think, is like it's recency bias to think that this is the way that the entire MCU has run. Because when you watch the other movies, that's not the case, right?
Yeah, I think it's my whole perspective on MCU is I enjoy all of the MCU content, but the draw is almost the universe itself rather than the individual properties within it.
Sure.
The sum is more than the whole. The sum is worth more than the parts.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been Marvel's strength over its entire history, going back to even comics and cartoons and stuff like that. Like think about the Marvel cartoons and think about, or well, Marvel comics is an obvious one, but think about Marvel cartoons. The the Spider-Man animated show was great, and it's great because Peter Parker is great and Spider-Man is great, but also it's great because it's part of the greater Marvel universe. They have characters that pop. Captain America pops up in that show. Iron Man pops up in that show. He partners up with the X-Men quite a bit. Morbius comes in that show. Like, there's a whole bunch of characters that drop in and out that aren't main characters. Like, fucking, he goes to Doctor Strange for life advice, right? Like, what? When I forget what he goes to. He's just like has a question about life, and he goes to Doctor Strange to ask the question, and it doesn't matter that it's 2 seconds of a 30 seconds of a 20-minute show. It adds to the world to know that, like, oh, they exist in this universe too, and it's cool. And like, there's a
Yeah.
larger framework here, and there's something going on. And like, you know, I think that it all it is world building, and it adds to it, right? I think the characters are obviously a draw and obviously important and obviously a big part of it. But I think that the Marvel's strength has always been in the wide cast of characters that they have and the wide stories that they can tell. Um, when you think about Marvel versus DC Comics, when you think about DC Comics' famous storylines, normally they aren't like you're talking about like Batman Year One, or you're
Red
talking
Sun.
about Court of Owls, or you think about Superman, you're thinking about like Red Sun, things like that, right? You're thinking about individual character storylines where it's like, cool, this is like a arc that happened with
An arc
this
for
character or
Batman, an
this
arc
character,
for Superman,
right?
whereas Marvel, it's an arc for the universe.
Right, where
Civil
it's like
War.
Civil War or House of M, or Secret Wars or something like that, right? Like, where they're using their full cast of characters
Chris, did I lose you?
down to the
Hey, Chris,
of
I
the
think
Marvel
I'm.
universe
Chris, you
characters,
keep
puzzle
cutting
pieces
out.
fit. That's the most interesting and exciting part. Oh,
Yeah, you were cutting
can
out for
you
like a
hear me
good
now?
30 seconds, so you're good now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the whole point is like the Marvel universe is more when the puzzle pieces are fitting together of all these characters that you love, whereas uh, I think it's a strength more than it is a detriment. I don't think it's a detriment to how the characters are. I think it's a strength. It's an additive more than it is a detriment.
Cool. Yeah,
But yeah,
it's
I don't know how you feel, but I think
it's it's kind of where and I think I've said this before, where it's like where Marvel with Star Wars, I can see there being a story told that isn't about the Jedi, that isn't about like you could set a story on a planet in the middle of nowhere and still have like a Star Wars story be told, even if there's no Jedi or anything involved.
right.
And I'm not sure if Marvel could pull that off as easily.
Well, the thing that's
And that's not like a detriment to Marvel. Is just more of a, I would say, in terms of like the world building aspect of like those two universes.
I think the biggest thing is that Marvel, well, it's tough because like, and it goes back to the thing with DC too. Like, DC has Metropolis and Gotham and Themyscira and these places that are like,
Fictional,
yeah,
completely
they're
fictional. Central City.
fictional, yeah, and they require world building, and the world building part of it is interesting, right? That's why you can have a show like Gotham that doesn't involve Batman, but it involves like the city, and it involves the kind of building of the Rogues Gallery and stuff like that. Like, that's interesting. Gotham as a character is interesting, whereas Spider-Man's set in New York. Like, we know New York. That's not interesting anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you can world build their version of New York, but like, it's not the same as like building out Gotham, the city that you don't know, and like it's only it exists in your imagination or in cartoons or whatever.
Well,
Like,
on that, it's one thing I've seen other people make. This isn't in the Polygon article, which I'll be sure to link to in the show notes. Let me just add a note to myself for that. But it's this idea that I've heard someone else make where Marvel almost has like a sitcom-y world, in the sense where like the joke is in a sitcom at the end of the episode everything returns to normal, and Marvel doesn't, by no means does not adhere to that in like the grander scheme of things, but they're like, it doesn't feel like the average person's life changed because of the Battle of New York
Right.
type thing. And it's like, I'm not sure if that's a negative or a positive. I'm not sure if that means that they need to do more underlying world building, but you also could see that they actually do address that in the Spider-Man Homecoming, where Vulture's life kind of was, upended because he was trying to make money off salvage, and lo and behold, that's a small guy in New York impacted by the Battle of New York. But I think they do have a bit of a point where it doesn't feel like the rest of the world is as heavily impacted by the movies, unless it's a major plot point within the movie itself, like Endgame. Thanos snapped half the universe away, so that's a major plot point. But prior to that, and even really in some cases after that, it almost feels like the universe kind of just like, okay, everything's normal again.
Well, remember, this is the first time we've seen something post Endgame.
Yeah. And so I think it's good that they do say, yeah, we understand, the blip, and you're kind of readjusting, because it's addressing what I think is that bigger problem that existed in the MCU in the past. So I think it's a criticism that may have been you could maybe apply to like MCU, like phase 1, phase 2, but I'm not sure you could apply it now. But
yeah, I mean, I think they've gone. Age of Ultron 2 also had some huge ramifications, and like they bring up Sokovia and the Sokovia Accords quite a bit in all of their shows, or in all of the content since Age of Ultron. And it's so funny of like, I've seen a lot of people say like, man, they really want us to go back and watch Age of Ultron, which is true. When you go back and you watch Age of Ultron, that movie is so important, and so like I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, like it got pretty shafted when it came out, but like looking back now with context, like, yeah, it's super important, and it's a lot better than you think as it fits in as like a key puzzle piece, right?
yeah.
And so yeah, I think Marvel's done a great job of like building off of its own kind of groundwork, right? Like they've taken risks, and they've taken their lumps setting the groundwork, but like it really does pay off a lot better than like you would think it does.
Well, to your thing with the Sokovia, though, I do want, like, they aren't talking about like the universe reacting to things that happen within it, but to be more like you and I would, if we were characters in the Marvel universe, would our lives be that very different from one moment to the next? And yes, I know in a grand geopolitical thing, something like Sokovia, if it happened in the real world, it probably wouldn't greatly impact my life. But the existence of superheroes probably would greatly impact like technology, how we live our lives, like what things we do. But it does, and I think this might just be a general, like, I'm not sure if this is something that I don't know if the MCU movies have time to go into this. I'm not sure if the shows can even go into this on some level, but this idea that we have these, I think honestly this is a bigger scene in the DC expanded universe than it is in Marvel, but it's like the idea, because this is one that really strikes me as an example of this in a nutshell, is Metropolis is essentially destroyed at the end of Man of Steel and whatever,
right?
And Marvel, not to that level, but it feels like a lot of whatever in how the lives of the average person don't seem to be as heavily impacted by these major events as you think they would be if you existed in that universe. Then again, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like how if you lived in a D&D campaign setting, it would be an absolutely horrible place to live in. And I'm starting to look at like the superhero settings. I'm like, man, those would be kind of horrible to live in, because your life could just be like completely upended tomorrow because by a whim.
Yeah, like if we lived if we lived our lives, right, Logan, like we're in LA, like would Sokovia really affect us that much?
Mm-mm.
No. Would like something like okay, well, obviously the blip would affect us, but like something
But like Iron Man's one, its whole thing, it takes place in Los Angeles.
yeah, but
Like
like that what we talked Logan, we talked about that for like a month and then move on because now he's
true.
just flying around and then it's just an incident. Like how many huge things happen that we don't talk about anymore? Like when dude, I got into videos about the mass shooting in Vegas that happened like a couple years ago. And like there's a bunch of great like Wall Street Journal did a great breakdown of it. Um and like the instance of it, and I was like, man, why are we talking about this still? Like this is still a big deal. It's like, well,
Well,
world
it's
moves
like
on.
world
Right?
moves on. Like people are forgetting details from even last month's attack on the Capitol.
Yeah.
That
So
was like
like
not even 2 months ago, and it feels like
yeah.
ancient
So
history.
like so like yeah,
I think you
Logan,
got a point. Yeah,
someone attacked the Capitol. Like we had people literally storm the Capitol and try to kill senators and take them hostage. And what do you and I talk? Does this affect our daily lives?
not
Are we
really.
talking about this still? What is what I'm saying? Right? Like in terms of us living in LA, and yes, it happened on the freeway. At most, we'd be talking about was still fixing the freeway from that Iron Man fight.
Fair
That'd
point.
be probably the extent of like what we talk about.
Fair point.
And
Um,
again, we get a little bit of it of like now in I think in Infinity War. I mean, they're asking for the Hulk's autograph, or in Endgame, they're asking for the Hulk's autograph, right? Like these kids are
yeah.
walking around, like they understand these people exist, right? And like they become sort of quasi celebrities, and we see it a little bit in uh, Agents of Shield of like yeah, there's toys now and like all that kind of stuff, merchandise. There's the I have another question too. This is a little side note, but anyway, the they have Vulture's daughter doing the drawings of the Avengers, right? At the beginning of Homecoming, like stuff like that, right? Like they're pop culture becoming icons in that now they exist, and so kids are super into these superheroes and like that kind of
Hell,
stuff
Cap
is
did a detention video for them. Um,
right, right, stuff like that. Like it's still like they're being integrated into the daily lives, right? Like I don't think that's necessarily something that is
I want
been
this to be.
overlooked.
This conversation has made me realize I know what I want the Hulk's entire side arc to be in the She-Hulk series. It is him trying to live his best life as an Instagram influencer. Like I want that to be like the Hulk's entire thing. Like he's all in on Instagram influencing, and it's just like
He's doing ads. He's doing
yeah,
ads
it's
and stuff
like
like
he's like kind of like dropped some of the science stuff. He's like, this is kind of it's chill, it's relax, and it's just like Bruce,
that.
come
So
on, buddy.
I do have a question, and this is what as I was thinking about this. So in Agents of Shield, in like the first couple episodes, we do see the toys, like Avengers toys, and like the stuff in the windows and like the merchandise for Avengers, right? Who licenses that stuff? Is it Stark Industries?
Like I bet, I honestly would bet money Stark, like Stark somehow figured out a way to make sure he had the rights to all that stuff, just so
I
they can
would.
fund it
That's what I was trying to
because
think. I was like,
because it speaks to both Stark as a businessman, but it also speaks to like especially around that time when he's really starting to like change how he like thinks about the world. Like, hey, these merchandise sales can help us like fund like
yeah,
hey,
Quinjets and
we
shit.
damaged that build. Like they made a whole thing in Age of Ultron of where, hey, I destroyed a
Buy the
building.
building.
Can I buy it? It's just like I can see him being like, how much money do we have left in the merchandising fund? Okay, we can buy that building. Like I wouldn't it would shock me at all if they use that as a means to fund their efforts.
Yeah, that's what it just hit me of like who's licensing all this stuff.
No,
But yeah,
I've legit thought about that. Like, I've legit thought about that because I'm like, that's like the only thing that makes sense. But you'd also have a whole market on Etsy of like black market Avengers material. It'd be like the real world where like Disney can't react fast enough to some of that stuff. There's also some like custom made things that you really like if you don't advertise them and you don't sell them like online, people wouldn't notice. It's just like there's totally like an Avengers like merchandise black market out there. Maybe this is what I'm talking about, where it's like, how would it impact the real world thing? This is like the mini series that like needs only like 3 episodes that are 10 minutes long for Disney Plus, is like a throwaway gag. It is the girl who makes the Etsy, like go through and like interview the girl who makes the Etsy stuff of like Hulk hand warmers or something, like little inane silly things like that. That would actually be really fun. Hey, Disney, hire me.
Oh no.
I'll make some weird social content. Oh, man. Yeah, I guess that kind of goes to my whole hope with this next phase MCU, with them now having the ability to do TV shows with Feige, where it's
I'm
not
super
as
excited
hands
because
off.
they're gonna get weird.
They're gonna
and I
get
like
weird,
it.
but they can start getting into like that little thing I just showed up. Like that becomes like plausible now. Whereas if they had to do movies, like you couldn't do stuff like that. I think I think the TV series are gonna can't have the potential to like fill in some of the weaker parts of the MCU.
Yeah. Like if we get that Jimmy Woo series, oh my god, I'm gonna freak
I
out.
want that. I honestly could use more Randall Park just in general, but yeah, give us a Jimmy Woo series with Randall Park headlining that, and I'm in.
Yeah.
Like that would be fantastic.
His comic is absolutely hilarious and it's funny as hell and it's great.
Like
So if they could just bring that over, it could be great.
like even if like you don't do a series, like you can do, because this is something Disney Plus could play with, and I kind of, this actually ties into like a bit with Star Wars, where I think there is a space that like the old serialized movies where you'd get like that 10-minute movie that would play
Yeah.
before the other movie. Disney kind of does this a bit with like when they did like the Frozen thing before Coco, which was god
they do
awfully
shorts.
long and too long. Like, or they do like the shorts. It's like, what if like you do like serialized stories, but they aren't necessarily a series? Like, imagine a Jimmy Woo like mystery, where instead of it being like every like a 60-minute episode or like a 30-minute episode, like it's like a hour-long TV special where he gets like one every like year. We get a Jimmy Woo mystery.
Yeah.
Like,
Something like that'd be great.
do something like that. That would be fantastic, because then you can have these smaller little pieces that just fit within the universe where you can explore, you can have fun, but you also aren't trying to be like, okay, we need to have like a serialized arc that goes over 8 episodes. Because I wouldn't want that with like the Jimmy. I would want like a 90s X-Files where there might be like an overarching thing, but it's Monster of the Week. Like,
I want the Jimmy Woo Monster of the Week X-Files style.
yeah. And it doesn't have to be
show.
Jimmy Woo as a serialized thing. I'm like, I think there's a space for that hasn't existed really before, but can actually work in our current streaming environment with properties like Marvel and Star Wars, where you can have like a thing or recurring characters where they get a moment every like year or so, just because you can enrich the universe.
Yeah. I want Watto's Junk Shop. Give me a video about it's like Pawn Stars, but it's just Watto's Junk Shop.
Oh my god. Like some Star Wars documentary.
No, dude, it's literally Pawn Stars. I want to see Watto negotiate with people as they walk in to sell shit.
Oh my god. I don't see that one getting past the Lucasfilm story group, but
Why not? You don't think he runs it like Pawn Stars, where he's underselling and overselling?
like maybe like a Watto's, like maybe not exactly like Pawn Stars, but yeah, like a Watto series where he's just like trying to negotiate his way to like profit. Like that sounds like a Marvel spin-off comic, honestly. Where he got like a one-off.
Yeah, dude. I want Watto, Pawn Stars, And then uh yeah, I want trying to think what else I want. I want Greedo the bounty hunter.
uh,
Uh Speaking of bounty hunters, by the way, I know we skipped over it. I'm so curious of what Star Wars Hunters is. I have no fucking idea. I'm
I
so
am so
curious.
behind on the comics for Star Wars.
No, wait, have you seen this yet, Logan?
Mm, did I miss something Star Wars news?
You might have.
How?
So Nintendo Direct on Wednesday, uh, they teased a Star Wars game for Switch called Star Wars Hunters. It was like a 30-second CG trailer. It wasn't even like they showed holograms and lightsabers, and that's about it. And
And
so
it's
everyone,
Zynga.
yeah, that's kind of the interesting part of it's a everyone assumes it's a battle royale or like a some kind of a Fortnite style battle royale in the Star Wars universe, but
Nintendo Switch,
it's
iOS, and
made by
Android.
it's made by Zynga and it's mobile and Switch apparently. And
Yeah.
so who knows what that game is?
Greatest Hunters of the
Uh,
Galaxy in a real-time crossplay squad battles.
yeah. So again, like I have no idea what this game is or how it plays. They just showed CG trailer, and then they were like, "Cool, coming soon." And I was like, "What is this?" But yeah, I was very confused. But yeah, I'm surprised you did not catch up on that because I was like,
No, I missed that. Lucasfilm and
"Yeah,
Like Zynga. There's a name you haven't heard in a
it's a
while.
farming
Yeah.
simulator."
Yeah, it's like, you know what? It's like you wouldn't play a game that was like Farmville but moisture evaporators instead.
I would,
Like Moisture Farmer. I'd
I
play
would,
that game. I'd play that game just for the lulz. Like,
yeah, I'd play that game. But yeah,
oh god.
that's a thing. Um,
It
but
almost
yeah,
sounds like it's
I have no idea what that
competitive
game is.
arena combat game. Team-based multiplayer battles. I wonder if this is more like akin to a
Like
non-canon. Is this just like the arena in like Gracchus the Hutt's arena from the comic run?
I don't know. But see, like for me, I saw they specifically mentioned that it's set between episode 6 and 7. Uh, so we're still playing in that 30-year time gap that we have no clue what is in there. But well, not totally no clue, but there's a large swath that's missing in that area.
Yeah,
But anyway,
it also looks like it's a free to play. So,
yeah. So
which could mean
my
anything. That can mean like Fortnite or Cash
yeah, again,
Grab.
my first thing was like, oh, maybe it's like Clash of Clans, right? And then I thought about it, and I was like, they wouldn't put it on Switch if it was like Clash of Clans. It would only be mobile if it was Clash of Clans. And I was like, okay, well, it has to have some kind of controls and some kind of thing. I was like, maybe it's like Fortnite. And like that's kind of where I landed in terms of in my head canon of like what it is. But who knows?
Could be
Who knows?
Fortnite. I even read this and I can see this being either Fortnite or even like a tactical, like basically like
Yeah,
XCOM tactics type
yeah.
thing.
So no clue. They didn't frame it that way in the trailer. It looks very actiony.
Mm.
But who knows? It's a trailer. It's a CG trailer. Who knows what it's going to be? But yeah, just wanted to bring that up before we end because it popped in my head when we were talking about
How did I miss
hunters.
this?
I
Man.
have no idea.
Yeah, because I didn't add like the Boba Fett because I know there's a comic run right now that's being headlined by Boba Fett. That
Yeah,
I believe it's taking place between right now most of the Marvel comic run is taking place between Empire and Jedi. They've moved on essentially. So basically,
yeah. It
like, the
was a New
first
Hope for a
four
while.
years was like between A New Hope and Empire, and now they've moved on to between Empire and Jedi, which I think is kind of interesting. That means you are never really actually truly like behind in a sense because they're just filling in the story
Yeah,
to where it isn't like this isn't like the future beyond like Rise of Skywalker or in like the in between period between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, to where it isn't like, I enjoy reading these stories. I would highly recommend them, but they also like, I don't feel like I'm behind because I'm not like up to date with all of them, because they're kind of just, it's kind of nice that they're doing this, they figured out a good way to tell stories set between the two of those, between all of the films and the series, that can focus on the main characters, and introduce new ones like Afra. But yeah, maybe that's a topic for that we should just kind of like plan to discuss at some point down the road, is like the Star Wars comics a little bit more in depth. But yeah, I think that does it for me. You got anything else, Chris?
No, that's about it.
All right, I'm gonna roll credits because again, I have the power. James is still doing his
Grayskull.
Yeah. James is still doing his, I'm learning how to do like the
Useful
volume type stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a podcast and talk about stuff like the volume. Some of us are actually, working to better ourselves and our understanding and our like, learning and to make our careers move forward. And then there's, me, I'm just talking about Star Wars.
Right there with you, buddy.
Please like, share, subscribe, do all of those fun things. Backlog is actually making major headway. Hooray! To where everything should be hopefully up to date in the next 2 weeks. So where I'm no longer behind on posting things. So let's see if I actually pull that one off. But other than that, everyone stay safe. Wear a mask. If you're in Texas, extra blankets. Stay safe out there. Take care. See you in 2 weeks.